name is Lydia Matthews, and I'm the curator of the Travessia Muxima exhibition here in Porto. And I'm here because of an invitation from Virgilio from Ciclo. And when I heard the theme about what happens to the world happens to us, because of the moment we're living in, I was thinking a lot about the legacies of colonialism and the Black Lives Matter movement. So this led me to think about how to talk about that and what it means here in Portugal. Originally, I invited Alfredo Jaar because I remembered the piece, the Muxima piece that he made about 15 years ago, and it moved me very deeply, and it was about the legacy of the Portuguese in Angola. And then, because I was very interested in doing a socially engaged project for the Biennale, I then also thought about Susan Meiselas, who had done a very powerful work in Lisbon, also about the same time, about 15, 16 years ago. And I thought that we should think about what this would mean to do something like this in a time of COVID. And I knew that with that in mind, we needed to assemble a very strong team of people who could think together and make something like this happen. So at that point, I reached out to Cynthia Bodenhorst, who is an extraordinary artist and designer, who helped us think about how to make this accessible in the time of COVID. And also, we asked Virgilio to introduce us to people at the university who study these issues, and we had the kind invitation of meeting Lydia Ferro, who then led us to her graduate student, Bia, and others. And Susan will tell you more about the process from there.
When Lydia called with this invitation, of course, the first question as a photographer is, how can I even begin to imagine a project if I can't be present? Because to me, the idea of beginning to know people is walking the streets and encountering people and slowly evolving a set of relationships that one draws on. And the idea of being inclusive of this community really came from the magic of Zoom. Believe it or not, Zoom became our first encounters. So when Lydia invited two students, one Bia, who became very central to the outreach in the community, and Dori Negro, who's an artist and former student, they began to be the two people that we were in constant interaction with as they began to introduce us to the streets of Porto and some favorite kind of sites of memory and some of erasure. So the concept of how do we begin to portray this community as they see themselves evolved into what you see here as annotated photographs, some of which they've taken, some of which we've taken on the screen as they presented places to us. So it's been a kind of magical interchange in which we continue to be in dialogue.
And videos as well, because we had an opportunity to videotape them while we were walking on the street. So there is also, given that the Black community, often people have told us is invisible in Porto, we thought a lot about how to make this visible and how to help people access their stories, not only through the photographs, but also through the actual words of the people who are in the photographs. Yes. So there's many layers of the show, and it takes time to sit and listen and process and really think about where are you in relationship to these stories. And that actually leads me to the middle room, where Alfredo Jaar has a piece that talks about you don't take a photograph, you make one. And that is really the spirit of the ethics of both of these projects, to think about where you are in relationship to them, and also not to see it as an opportunity to take something, but rather to make something together And that, I think, is also in both.
So it's really a co-creation, and it's a collaboration on many, many different levels. But it's important to note these little triggers, which people don't quite process as what that's the entry point to the video. So the question of how far people travel with us to the various levels, the first on the annotated photograph, there might be a hint of a small story, and then behind it, longer stories that are shared through the video, but it's the entry through the AR, which of course was particularly helpful at the time of COVID. And I think the objects, though, on the wall are also important because they're also parts of our memory, the way those objects carry the memory of places and people we've known. So we were working with a number that were offered to us from various parts of the community. So hopefully people will come and spend some time, and the vitrine is a kind of way of experiencing or reconfiguring our process, which is an unusual one, certainly a unique one for me. We've never worked creatively in such an elaborate, collaborative mode.
Yeah.
I mean,
and also we were very excited when we learned that this is a project we've been working on for the last 5 months. But we learned when we arrived here that the president of Portugal just recently, during the celebrations of independence and the liberation, for the first time said that it was time for Portugal to deal with its colonial past and its history. And so we felt that that was a very important context for this show to be coming up for view in. And we really hope that it will be a kind of tool for people to begin that repositioning process.
And reflection.
Yeah.
The reflections come from various angles. Some of comfort and the welcome from Porto and specifically, or Portugal, and some that are more painful, that have been the lack of acceptance or understanding or curiosity or sharing. So there's a range to the kinds of stories that are shared.